Kia ora, and welcome to this short video on what the college is currently reviewing in terms of its curriculum and approach to learning. Whatever is the result of this review will not be implemented until 2020, but we are gathering lots of evidence, examples, ideas and opinions so as to provide our students with the best and most relevant experience. The process starts with the national curriculum, which is now our guiding document for what schools should be focused on in developing young New Zealanders. It asks us to do this on a regular basis, and we do it every 5 years. Schools are asked to review how the design of their school activity is meeting the intentions of this national curriculum. So let's take a look at what these are. The curriculum is focused on the 5 learning hours of the school day, and this activity is expected to develop confident, actively involved young people who are well connected with their peers and the world and understand that their career will require continual learning. All the activity during these 5 hours is meant to be based on 8 key principles. For example, catering for the cultural diversity that New Zealand now benefits from, the inclusion of all students regardless of circumstances and background, and having a future focus so that students understand the way the world is rapidly changing and are prepared with the relevant understanding and skills. The use of our lesson time is meant to be aimed at developing values that are not simply topics to be understood, but genuine values displayed in the daily actions and behaviours of our students. Lastly, the national curriculum states 5 key competencies and expects all of our students to leave school able to critically think, manage themselves, relate well to others, use language and images to confidently participate and contribute to the community and the world. Our review will start with considering if our current 2 official targets best fulfil the intentions of the national curriculum, as they may need updating. Our review will include collecting lots of voice and opinion. As an example, the students this year were given 3 choices for what they liked most about school, and with 3 choices each, the lessons still only scored 7% of the vote. This is something we take very seriously. So let's start by looking at what the experts are saying are some of the big questions schools should be asking during a review like this.
Every country on earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are 2 reasons for it. The first of them is economic. People are trying to work out, how do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? How do we do that, given that we can't anticipate what the economy will look like at the end of next week, as the recent turmoil is demonstrating? How do we do that? The second, though, is cultural. Every country on earth is trying to figure out, how do we educate our children so they have a sense of cultural identity and so that we can pass on the cultural genes of our communities while being part of the process of globalization. How do we square that circle? The problem is they're trying to meet the future by doing what they did in the past. And on the way, they're alienating millions of kids who don't see any purpose in going to school. When we went to school, we were kept there with a story, which was if you worked hard and did well and got a college degree, you would have a job. Our kids don't believe that. And they're right not to, by the way. You're better having a degree than not, but it's not a guarantee anymore. And particularly not if the route to it marginalizes most of the things that you think are important about yourself.
Well, if you think that the fundamental job of a teacher is to transmit information from their head to their students, then you're right. They are obsolete. I mean, you probably imagine a classroom where this teacher is spewing out facts at a pace which is appropriate for one student, too fast for half and too slow for the rest. Luckily, the fundamental role of a teacher is not to deliver information. It is to guide the social process of learning. The job of a teacher is to inspire, to challenge, to excite their students to want to learn.
What if I were to say that arithmetic, as we teach it today, is an obsolete skill? Okay? The whole world will erupt if I say that, because they will say, reading, writing, arithmetic. That's the core of whose education? Core of the military education. Go back 200 to 300 years in this country and say that, 300 years later, no one's going to teach anybody how to shoot a gun, and no one's going to teach anybody how to ride a horse, and the teacher is going to say, but, those are basic life skills. This guy will get killed when he moves out. And you have to say, no, ma'am, the world will have changed. These things will become sport.
While we are asking these big questions, let's review the current situation.
A system of education that is modelled on the interests of industrialism and in the image of it. I'll give you a couple of examples. Schools are still pretty much organised on factory lines, ringing bells, separate facilities, specialised into separate subjects. We still educate children by batches. You know, we put them through the system by age group. Why do we do that? You know, why is there this assumption that the most important thing kids have in common is how old they are? You know, it's like the most important thing about them is their date of manufacture. You know what I mean? Well, I know kids who are much better than other kids at the same age in different disciplines, you know, or at different times of the day, or better in smaller groups than in large groups, or sometimes they want to be on their own. If you're interested in the model of learning, you don't start from this production line mentality. It's essentially about conformity, and increasingly it's about that as you look at the growth of standardised testing and standardised curricula, and it's about standardisation. I believe we've got to go in the exact opposite direction. That's what I mean about changing the paradigm. If you've got 2 children or more, I bet you they are completely different from each other, aren't they? Aren't they?
Let's talk a bit about what math looks like in the real world and what it looks like in education. See, in the real world, math isn't necessarily done by mathematicians. It's done by geologists, engineers, biologists, all sorts of different people, modeling and simulation. It's actually very popular. But in education, it looks very different. Dumbed down problems, lots of calculating, mostly by hand. Lots of things that seem simple and not difficult like in the real world, except if you're learning it.
Let's take a look at what's being considered for possible change. The leadership team and the heads of department have agreed on the following 5 focus points: the integration of subjects, the structure of the daily timetable, the reports and assessment, and the improvement to teacher training. But change can be difficult.
One of the real challenges is to innovate fundamentally in education. Innovation is hard because it means doing something that people don't find very easy for the most part. It means challenging what we take for granted, things that we think are obvious. The great problem for reform or transformation is the tyranny of common sense. Things that people think, well, they can't be done any other way because that's the way it's done.
The integration of subjects is something the national curriculum refers to a number of times. It asks schools to make coherent transitions and links between all of the topics and the ideas that we want the students to learn. By linking the subjects, it allows schools more time to focus the school day on developing the values, key competencies and skills while still covering the traditional school topics. The national curriculum makes special mention of future-focused issues being a great way to do this. A school day that better develops values and key competencies coincides with what the World Economic Forum has been reporting on in regards to the priorities industries are asking for in young people from 2020 onwards. So, what are the alternatives to the things we do currently?
So here we have fewer blocks of time, and we integrate art into physics and into biology by having kids publish books, by having kids create documentary films, instead of saying, well, every 45 minutes you're going to jump up and run around. So there's time to do things seriously. The other thing is by having small teaching teams of a teacher, one teaches math science, the other one teaches humanities combined, that the 2 of us together have 50 kids.
Learning modules are classes taught by either 1 or 2 teachers that teach different learning areas, and this allows us to look at different aspects of one concept. Like at school here, we're showing how everything is linked together, and yeah, that's something that I really enjoy.
But then when you put maths with like PE, which I love, it's really, really fun because you get to look at how maths is involved with movement.
I had a module called Horror and Hotel, so it was a mixture of English and visual arts.
Big projects are the part in our curriculum where students collaborate with each other in order to make a difference in the outside community.
It's an opportunity for you to be able to connect more with the outside world, the real world.
To learn how to self-manage and self-direct, they need to learn how to organise. All of those skills that often a single-cell classroom doesn't offer.
Let's look at a couple of practicalities. What does the school day look like? Well, a number of schools in New Zealand now are using these project modules to ensure the normal topics and ideas from different subjects are linked together to make more sense of what's being learnt. It is also the case that in both secondary and intermediate schools, Traditional classrooms are being redesigned to create different spaces for different needs that the children might have, while at the same time making sure children learn what works best for them, including traditional teaching. So now it's time for you to tell us what you think. Please submit your ideas and opinions to the college. Community input is very important in this process. Thank you for watching.